chosen.
Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings. Now let's get straight to it. Today's lesson is spiritual wickedness in high places, the fornication agenda. All right, I'm doing this lesson because a lot of times, a lot of our people, we see different things like the athlete that plays for the Washington Wizards, formerly the Los Angeles Lakers, Kyle Kuzma. He recently had on a skirt with would look like a bunch of puff jackets or something put together. And different things like also the athlete that plays for the Los Angeles Lakers, Russell Westbrook, which had on a skirt. And really, if we go back, a lot of athletes, they've been doing that. But anyway, we see different things like that, and we say there's a gay agenda. But really, to me, the way that I see things, it's the fornication agenda. All right, because it's more than just the so-called white man trying to, make us gay. All right, so-called gay or homosexual. Now that's part of it. They are trying to sexualize especially the young so-called Black boy, which we're gonna talk about, and the so-called Black girl as well. But it's more to it than that. It's spiritual wickedness going on in high places. All right, it's really more about idolatry and also the other aspects of fornication, which we're going to talk about. And also, a lot of brothers will say things like, that brother's butt broken and things like that. And I'm not saying that that's not the case, but it's a lot deeper than, different aspects of slavery and so on and so forth. It's a idolatry agenda, a fornication agenda, a pedophilia agenda. And that's what we're going to talk about. All right, and due to some recent events that took place here in Babylon. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and jump on in this thing. We're gonna bring back a few scriptures from the last time we did spiritual wickedness in high places. All right, so let's get Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12.
It's the book of Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
Yeah, everything that you see that plays out on planet Earth is all spiritual. It all has a spiritual aspect, either on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side. And more times than not, when we see these things take place, it's really, different things that they're trying to push on us so that we worship their gods. All right, it's spiritual wickedness, but they don't come out and say that. They don't come out and say that, but that's really what it is. All right, spiritual wickedness in high places, because they know what's going on in those high places. The so-called elite, they know exactly what they're doing. They're breaking down society to where we're going to get to the point where all types of idolatry, all type of wickedness is going to be not only accepted, but celebrated like it already is now, but it's going to get, continuously worse. Let's get Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20.
It's the book of Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter.
That's exactly what's taking place now. Everything that's good is called evil. All right. If you are the Most High, you call wicked, you call a radical, you call extremist and things like that. Just because you follow the statute, laws, and commandments, you just doing what the Most High told you to do. But you're the one going off. But the things that are against the scriptures, that's good. Let's give them a day. Let's celebrate them. They're prideful. They're courageous. Come out the closet, that's courageous, right? That's a good thing. That courageous, to be a man or woman of courage is a good aspect, right? So that's what these things are, called nowadays. Good is called evil and evil is called good. All right, let's get 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11.
It's the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices.
And that's why I like to go into certain aspects of the world, because we don't need to be ignorant of Satan's devices. Okay, sometimes you may not know what you're looking at. All right, and even those of us that are repentant Israelites, we can get confounded at times if we don't know what we're looking at. So you have to be able to recognize some of these things on the left-hand side as well. Because again, if not, even we could get thrown off. And I'm not saying I'm above that either. I'm just saying in general, we have to be able to see that. A good judge, he always knows righteousness and wickedness. All right. Any judge, even in the so-called court system and justice system that we have today, they know all of the slang that's in the streets and different things like that. So when it's said to them, they know what's going on. But on the righteous side, we know Psalms chapter 82 and 6 said that we are gods or judges on the earth. So we have to be able to recognize these things. Now, this is one thing I saw recently. I was actually going to do like a shorter video on this. And it's really inspired me to kind of go all the way in, at least further more than just a shorter video. When I saw this cartoon show for children, Peppa Pig. It says Peppa Pig features a gay couple for the first time in nearly 2-decade history. Okay, so Peppa Pig included a same-sex couple in the show for the first time ever. Read about Penny Polar Bear's parents here. Okay, so essentially you had this, I guess this is, I think Penny Polar Bear or whatever the case is, this young girl right here, or this show, which is for young children, she had two parents, all right, that were two women. And this show is targeted for very young children. I'm talking like, I believe it's like for 4-year-olds or something like that. So this is what they pushing on our people. And it's not by accident. It's not because they're trying to be quote unquote inclusive. All right. It's not because they want to, be nice, or this is a genuine thing that they're doing for a quote unquote representation. It's so that they can, program the minds of our children as soon as possible, because they're not worried about the older people as much. They know that those that know what they're looking at, they're never going to accept this stuff, but they're trying to get the children while they can. All right. And we're going to talk more about the children later on as well. But I saw the video, and it's just something else how they just throw this stuff in here like it's nothing. And we know we can do these examples all day, right? Like this author gay wedding in 2019, all these cartoons now, none of them are safe. They're pretty much all pushing this, on our children. But again, there's a reason for that. All right, it's not random. All right, it's none of the stuff that they say is for. And I had this, matter of fact, we pretty much know that. Let's get Leviticus chapter 18 and verse 22.
The book of Leviticus chapter 18 and verse 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination.
So this is an abomination. According to the scriptures, that's not my opinion, or that is my opinion too, but it's not based on my opinion. This is based on the scriptures. All right, so this goes for mankind with womankind, or womankind, with womankind. Women are not supposed to be women, and men is not supposed to be men. That sounds basic. That sounds, obvious. However, we know that's not what the world teaches. But we're going at it on a baser level now, and we're working ourselves up. All right. And more specifically on women, let's get Romans chapter 1 and verse 24.
It's the book of Romans, chapter 1 and verse 24. Wherefore the Most High also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves.
Let's get verse 23.
Verse 23. And change the glory of the uncorruptible power unto an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things.
So when you look at a lot of the quote unquote gods or pagan deities that they worshipped in Egypt, you know, they were four-footed beasts and creeping things and birds. You had a falcon god and things of that nature. All right, they actually worshiping these things. Makes no sense at all. And they're going to talk about it in verse 25 here.
Verse 25. Who changed the truth of the Most High into a lie, and worship and serve the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen.
You know, like that fool P. Diddy. I remember he had a video not too long ago where the sun was rising. He was looking up to it, and he was like, "Thank God." I don't think a lot of people realize it, but what he was saying is that the sun was a god. All right, because that's what he worships behind the scene, and really in front of the scene. Obviously, if he doing that, but he's serving the creation more than the Creator. But that's what all them cats have to do. So that's what I expect out of him. But obviously, this was going on around the time that Paul was writing to the Israelites that were scattered in Rome. The same thing's been going on, you know, for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. Let's keep going.
Verse 26. For this cause the Most High gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature.
See, this is against the woman's nature. All right. And this is a big deal because these are signs that we are in the end times. When things like this are, you know, just made open on popular shows, like children's shows like this is end time signs here. All right. Now we know that these vile affections are coming back on the earth. Lets us know that time is winding down. All right, let's get verse 27.
Verse 27. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burn in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet.
So likewise with men, but we were just focusing on the women here. Oh, this is an abomination to the Most High. All right, again, this is a children's show, but we know this is very prevalent inside of our neighborhoods as well. All right, our people, we have embraced this fully. You know, even our men, we think that's a good thing for, you know, women to be with women, and it's not. It's an abomination. All right, but again, we're going to talk more about it. I'll pull something up really quick here. All right, it says, U.S. study says gay people are not, quote unquote, born that way. Sexual orientation not fixed. So although, you know, we never should be going back and forth with somebody about something like this, but this is an article you can pull up and read for yourself, or you can show to somebody if you needed to. And this kills the argument that, you know, quote unquote, gay people are born that way. There is no gay gene. There is nothing that suggests, you know, inside of a genetic makeup that you are born, you know, predisposition to be gay per se. All right. And this is what this article goes into. We're not going to go all the way into it. Let's just get like the main crux of it here. Bring this out right here out.
Dr. Mayer said many people who contributed to the study asked not to be identified. The anonymity they requested is to protect them from a potential backlash from those who would disagree with the study. He admitted the study may stir controversy among both pro and anti-LGBT people.
Ain't it crazy that they the main militant people? Like you had this survey that was conducted. I mean, a study that was conducted, and those that contributed to it didn't even want to be identified because they were scared these quote unquote LGBTQ people was going to attack them. All right. But isn't that the very same thing that they tell other people not to do? Don't be a bigot and trans violence and things like that. But they the main people you got to watch out for. You know, you bring something like this up and, you know, suckers ready to fight or something. If not physically, they're going to call you every name in the book. But that's what they advocate against, right? But that's what they do. You know, and that's called being a hypocrite. All right, it says this study carried out by two researchers from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. So it's not, you know, somebody random. This is a reputable, study revealed that there is no scientific proof that sexual orientation is fixed. The researchers said the objective of their study is to draw the attention of the public to mental health problems of the LGBT community. So it used to be, I forgot what year they changed, maybe brothers know, but homosexuality and things of that nature used to be listed as a mental health disorder. All right, and then that was changed, of course. All right, but that's really what it is. And we're going to talk about that in a second too. It's really a mental health illness, or what the scriptures would call having a demon. That's really all this is. And instead of these demons, being attended to, you're told that these things are okay. All right, so you never try to get rid of that demon. All right. Now let's see. Did we have something else? I think I had something else I wanted to bring out here. Explain it further. Bill 16. This is a good argument. I mean, a good a good article to definitely read through, but it kills the argument, man. Oh, and then most people that have sex reassignment surgery, a lot of them, they want to go back to, most of them try to go back to their original sex. I saw recently somebody was saying that exact same thing. The Hodge twins, I saw a video on that. But anyway, again, this is the article brothers can pull up and definitely read through. I don't want to take too much time by reading through it, but there is no gay gene or anything that would make you fix on a quote unquote sexual orientation, which is a problem. It's a sexual orientation. So why are we putting this on children? Even if they're, quote unquote heterosexual, that's not something that children should even be dealing with at this age where you would be watching anything like this anyway. And whether you want to admit it or not, this is not normal. Okay. Any child would ask, why is there two mothers and not a mom and a dad? Okay. Now, this is what I want to get into though. This is because I did say this is a fornication agenda. So let's get 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 1.
It's the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 1. It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. Okay, so what we read here, Paul is bringing out that there was fornication among the Corinthians, meaning the scattered Israelites that lived in Corinth. Okay, it was reported to him that there was fornication among you. Now, what is fornication? It's not what the church teaches you it is. Okay, so we go to the word fornication here. Looks very familiar, right? Pornea, that's literally where you get the word porn from. Hopefully YouTube don't flag us for saying that, but it is what it is. So what fornication is illicit sexual intercourse.
Okay, fornication is not quote unquote sex before marriage. Now, what marriage really is, according to the scriptures, that's a whole different breakdown. And we're not talking about that right now, but for the sake of this lesson, um, just to get that out there, fornication is not quote unquote sex before marriage. This is what it is right here. They put it in this definition in the concordance. It says adultery, fornication, homosexuality, lesbianism, intercourse with animals, etc. Now, what does this look like? This looks like the quote unquote LGBTQ, right? Why do you think they put all these letters together? Because whether they know it consciously, subconsciously, they understand it's all part of the same thing. All fornication is the same, whether it's homosexuality, adultery, lesbianism, intercourse with animals, pedophilia, it's all part of the same thing. If you dive into homosexuality, you're no different from a pedophile, okay? Or adulterer. All these things are grouped together, just like the quote unquote alphabet, the alphabet boys, the LGBTQ. And I think they got more letters than that. It's like IA plus or something like that. Subconsciously, they already know it's part of the same thing. That's why I say it's a fornication agenda, because they want all of this, especially on the children of Israel. This is what they want pushed on us. Okay, they want all of these things to be seen as okay. All right, and it says sexual intercourse with close relatives. And that's what Paul was bringing out here in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 1. This is in Leviticus 18, I believe, verse 8. The nakedness of thy father's wife shall thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. Okay, and that's what they were doing in Corinth, sleeping with their father's wife, which that, whether that's your actual mother, of course, that's going off, but even if it's your stepmother, it's going off because that's your father's wife. But that's what they're trying to get us to do, man. It's all manners of fornication. It's not just quote unquote homosexuality. It's deeper than that. Let's get Jude verse 7.
It's the book of Jude, chapter 1 and verse 7. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth an example. It's like are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire.
Yeah, so in Sodom and Gomorrah, we know that the main aspect of fornication that they dived into was homosexuality. That's what they known for. But there was other manners of fornication going on, obviously, as well. But you see, it's the word fornication is used, giving themselves over to fornication. Is it because that they were, having sex before marriage? No, it's because they were diving into homosexuality. Read about that in Genesis, the 19th chapter. Okay. With the men trying to have sex with the men angels. So point is, this is clear proof that a fornication is not sex before marriage. It is a category of the different sins that are outlined mainly in Leviticus, the 18th chapter. All right, also in, I believe, 19 and 20, mainly 18 though, and a little bit in 20 as well. That's what fornication is, and that's what they're trying to get the children of Israel to be under. That's the real agenda, because idolatry is in this. That's fornication, either on a physical level, worshiping other gods, or on a spiritual level, which is really the same thing, to be honest. All right, but that's the real agenda here. Let's get 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 7.
The book of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 7. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth, only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way.
So the mystery of iniquity, that's what that mystery is, because everything is just come together to where you think that, evil is good, essentially. That's that mystery. And really only the elect will be able to see past it, even in the last days. All right, that's how crazy it's going to get, because it's going to get even worse. You know, all of the spells and the witchcraft and the magic that these wicked Edomites and really the other nations as well are pulling out, you know, it's going to get crazy. That's the mystery of iniquity. All right, the mystery school system of Kemen and Rome, so on and so forth. All right. Now, this is another thing that came out recently. So I'm pulling up a different article for now, but quote unquote Zaya Wade. Okay, I saw that recently, and that's another thing that made me want to do this lesson. But I know y'all saw the long hair that little boy has. We're gonna talk about that later on, but for now, let's talk about this. Remember when this came out, Dwayne Wade says trans daughter Zaya knew gender identity since she was 3 years old. All right. It says it was a process for us to sit down with our daughter and find out what she likes and who she is, Wade said. Look at this fool here. Look at this man. You know, it's such an abomination, man, that, you know, that he would do this to his people for whatever it is that, you know, that they promised this man. I don't know if it was just wealth. I don't know if it was fame, combination of both. But whatever it is, there's no way it could have been worth it. You know, what is a man that gains the whole world and loses his soul? And this man has lost his soul forever. He's done for. All right. But anyway, the point is why I pulled this up. You know, this is a fulfillment of prophecy. If you're really paying attention, and again, that's another reason that we're doing this lesson too. All right, one thing that I wanted to kind of touch on here from the obvious, outside the obvious fact that a 3-year-old wouldn't be able to tell anything at all, let alone their quote unquote gender. And this makes no sense. He's lying anyways. They groomed that boy to act like that. They did that. All right, if you know, even on a deeper level, you know, they had that sodomite, you know, little whatever they call it, I was looking after that boy. Only Lord knows what happened there. But anyway, it says Wade told Roberts that quote unquote Zaya has been his family's leader when it comes to educating them on the transgender community. Now, how do you have a child that at this time was 12 years old? How is that your leader of your house? What sense does that make? How can a 12-year-old tell a grown man how to lead a house or what he should think about the quote unquote transgender community? You know, they're doing all this on purpose. It's not just a coincidence. You know, they're using this family, you know, as a microcosm for how they want every family to be. They want a feminine man ran by his women and all the boys to be quote unquote transgender, and the girls to go whichever way they want to go. That's really what they're trying to show us here. And that's why we highlight D. Wade and his family. Not because they're the only ones, but because it's obvious that they're pushing this image on the so-called black man and woman. All right. Because that's why they picked them. If they had been so-called white people, wouldn't have cared as much. But they always pick our people because this is all about the fornication agenda, to keep our people low, to keep us from not worshiping the Most High. It's clear. All right, and it's a fulfillment of prophecy. Now let's start at the top. Let's get Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 1.
The book of Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 1. For behold, the Lord of hosts, does take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water.
What else? Verse 2.
The mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient.
So that's all been taken away from us. We turn our back on the Most High. You know, he took the mighty man, the man of war, the judge, the prophet, the prudent, the ancient, the whole stay of bread. Meaning the Nile, the whole stay of water. All right. And let's jump to verse 4.
Verse 4. and I will give children to their princes, and babes shall rule over them.
Babes shall rule over them. This man said that, quote unquote, Zaya Wade was the family's leader. Okay, babes will rule over them. That's exactly what they want. They want the child to be over the family. That's why D. Wade, he keeps accentuating that, I'm listening to, quote unquote, Zaya. Zaya is educating me. It's a fulfillment of prophecy when you're really paying attention. Babes shall rule over them. That's exactly what's happening. All right, and let's get verse 8.
Verse 8, for Jerusalem is ruined, and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against the Most High, to provoke the eyes of his glory.
Yeah, we did this to ourselves. Let's get verse 9.
Verse 9, the show of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves.
Yeah, they hide it not. So they're not even hiding this. Again, it's celebrated. They declare their sin as Sodom. Okay. And for our people that dive into this, we're going to get the same treatment that Sodom got. Okay, let's get verse 12.
Verse 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths.
You see, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. For my people. All right, this is talking about the children of Israel. It can't get any more clear than that. If you don't believe that we're the children of Israel, open the scriptures. All right, search the scriptures, man, and it's here. Women rule over them. That's why women going buck wild crazy, man. It's part of, the curse that the Most High put on us for our disobedience. All right, because this family here is ran by the woman. Women rule over them. Because every time you look up, it's always that broad, excuse my language, it's always that person, Gabrielle Union, that's always at the forefront, talking about some nonsense. All right. And this dude, not fit to be called a man, he cool with it. All right, but it's just a fulfillment of prophecy. So we can't be astounded at these things because they're going to continue to happen. It's going to get worse. Let's get Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 16.
It's the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 10 and verse 16. Woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child, and thy princes eat in the morning.
When thy king is a child, the leader, all right, that the person is, that the child is 12 years old, running a family. How can a 12-year-old tell a grown man that's in his late 40s? Something like how old would D-Wade be? Probably in his 40s, something like that. Whatever the case is, however old he is, it don't matter. He's supposed to be the man of the household, teaching that child, how to keep the statute, laws, and commandments, how to carry his name and carry his inheritance and his heritage, to build on the Wade name. But look what he does instead. Lead our people down this rabbit hole of fornication. It's a complete abomination. All right. And I just pulled something real quick because we're going to get to the part that I really want to get to as far as the fornication aspect. But, isn't it interesting that they have these quote unquote pronouns? They even put them on Instagram, right? Like you got an option to change your pronouns on Instagram. And they say this person, Elliot Page, uses he and they pronouns. But why do they even say they? Why do they say they? One person can be a they. My pronoun is quote unquote they. That's what they say. All right. Let's get Luke chapter 8 and verse 26.
It's the book of Luke, chapter 8 and verse 26. And they arrived at the country of the Gadarenes, which is over against Galilee.
All right, Kyle, let's get verse 27.
And when he went forth to land, there met him out of the city a certain man, which had devils long time, and wear no clothes, neither abode in any house, but in the tombs.
You see, it says this man had devils. He had devils. Okay, let's get verse 28.
Verse 28, when he saw Yahushua, he cried out and fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, what have I to do with thee, Yahushua, thou son of the most high God? I beseech thee, torment me not.
Okay, let's get verse 29.
Verse 29, for he hath commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for oftentimes it had caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and in fetters, and he brake the bands and was driven out of the devil into the wilderness.
Verse 30.
And Yahushua asked him, saying, what is thy name? And he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him.
Many devils. They. Okay, that's why they call these people they, and this is what they really want. Okay, they want everybody to have multiple spirits in them. If you can't discern whether you're a male or female, quote unquote, which is, clear from a biological standpoint, you don't have to guess or think about that. The Most High made it, very blatant for you. But if you have to think about that, it's because you have dual spirits, or even more than two spirits within your, within your body. And that's all that is. And like I said, that's why, they don't tell these people that these are mental illnesses, or really on the spiritual, if you're looking at it from a spiritual standpoint, these are demons on these people, man. And one thing you do have to keep in mind too, with a lot of people that are quote unquote homosexual, they have been molested when they were younger. Hopefully me saying that doesn't trigger anything for anybody, but I'm just just being honest from what I know here, that is the case. All right, which allows these certain demons to enter into someone's vessel. Let's get James chapter 1 and verse 8.
It's the book of James chapter 1 and verse 8. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways.
A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. If you identify as a they, you double-minded and you unstable in all your ways. We look at the word for minded here, G1374. What does it say here? It says double-minded, wavering, uncertain, doubting, divided in interest. If you a they, you divided in interest. What does it say? Two-spirited. All right, that's how you can be a they. You double-spirited. And this is what they really want. All right, this is what they really want for our people, to be double-spirited. Because when you see things like this, all right, well, when a child sees this is more opportunity for that child to ponder and wonder and be wavering on who they really are. All right, if this is what they should have for their household as well. All right, this is what they really want, especially for the children. Okay. It's a fornication agenda. They want us to be double-minded, double-spirited, so you have no chance to worship the Most High. That's all it is when it comes down to it. Let's get Sirach chapter 19 and verse 29.
It's the book of Sirach chapter 19 and verse 29. A man may be known by his look, and one that hath understanding by his countenance when thou meetest him.
Verse 30.
A man's attire and excessive laughter and gait show what he is.
That's why you can tell. Someone doesn't have to even tell you that they are quote unquote homosexual or transgender, so on and so forth. Their countenance will tell you. And why is that? Again, this is not my opinion. This is just what's here in the scriptures. So don't come after me, just a messenger. But they have certain spirits on them. They have demons on them. And those demons that's inhabiting in their vessel makes these things like their countenance be very visible in a physical standpoint. If you look at a lot of them, if you look at them in the face, you can kind of tell eyes be kind of buck and look in a certain way. They get a lot madder than other people very quickly. And that's why, man. That's why. So let's keep it moving though. This is what I want to get to. Let's get Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 9.
The book of Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 9. The thing that have been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun.
None of these things that we see today are new. This agenda has been out. This is something that these people have always been a part of. It's something they've always wanted to push specifically on our people. Okay. This is another thing that happened. I remember Dwayne Wade on his son Zion 12 attending Pride Parade, quote unquote Pride Parade, which we know pride cometh before destruction. But he says, my job as a father is to support them. Support. Why would you support a child with a demon? Why would that be something you support? You should be supporting, the recovery of that child, if that was the case. But when you know what you're looking at, you know that they fostered that child to be that way. It didn't just happen out of nowhere. These two, they did that from the jump. Either instructed to do that from the very beginning, or it just happened and then they ran with it. But more than likely, based on how I know how things work, it started from a very young age. But the point here is that you have to think about this. What was somebody this young, I think at this time, 11 or 12 years old, if I'm not mistaken, at this time, Zion Wade was. Why would a young boy be at a quote unquote pride parade anyways at that age? Say if this child was quote unquote gay, who are they left to be gay with? Other 12-year-olds? I think not, because we know other grown men would be here at this pride parade. So what are they really trying to do here? You know what I mean? What are they really trying to do? Who are they trying to show that child to? In my perspective, they were trying to show this child to other men. Okay, and that's what happens a lot of times. Again, pedophilia is on the rise. That's what's going to happen next. They've already conquered homosexuality. That's why when I see certain things, it doesn't even come close to surprising me on that end, because that's all the way fully accepted. Like, that's done. They already closed the book on that. It's completely over with. The transgender stuff is pretty much all the way there too. And now they got another chapter to pursue here. That's what they're going to do. All right, it's a complete pedophilia agenda. All right, a fornication agenda. Let's get Matthew chapter 11 and verse 8.
It's the book of Matthew chapter 11 and verse 8. But what went ye out for to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they that wear soft clothing are in kings' houses.
So those that wear soft raiment are in the king's houses. Now, when you look up this word here for soft, you find something here. Now, we know that this is part of the Roman captivity when Yahushua was here on earth. Right? So when we go into how the Romans got down, you can clearly see why things are happening the way they are. It's not just because of the so-called white man's, sexual desires from a physical standpoint. That's part of it too, obviously. And again, they are trying to sexualize, us as a whole, us first, and then everybody else that falls under, the spell, they with that. But it's even, deeper on the spiritual level why they doing this. It's not just from a physical standpoint, it's spiritual as well. So where's the word for soft here? All right, malakos. So malakos, it says soft, effeminate. Soft to the touch, and this is referring to those that were in the king's houses, the Romans. Metaphor in a bad sense, effeminate, of a catamite, of a boy kept for homosexual relations with a man. That's what a catamite is. Now, again, this is how they got down. All right. I got catamite right here, because that's the word that we saw there in the definition. It says in ancient Greece and Rome, catamite was a pubescent boy who was the intimate companion of an older male, usually in a pederastic relationship. So pederasty is pretty much just pedophilia. Okay. It was generally a term of affection and literally means Ganymede in Latin. But it's also used as a term of insult when directed towards a grown man. But the point is, we know in Rome that they had quote unquote catamites in the king's houses. Okay. And they had pederastic relationships. This was very common. This is very common. It was not a big deal, at that time. It was not, well, no, not at that time. It's not a big deal now to them. Matter of fact, this is one of their preferences. They believe that is the real relationship that's supposed to exist between a boy and an older male. Again, if you're hearing this and it sounds crazy, look, I understand that, but it's just the truth. Okay, not because I said so. It's just here. And we got to get into it. Let's get 2 Maccabees chapter 6 and start at verse 1.
It's the book of 2 Maccabees chapter 6 and verse 1. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of the Most High.
So we see Israel departing from the laws of the Most High. Okay, let's get verse 2.
Verse 2, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympius, and that in Gazrism of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place.
So let's look at Jupiter really quick, because it says that our people were polluting the temple in Jerusalem and calling it the temple of Jupiter Olympius. Okay, now let's go into the quote unquote god Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is literally just, it says the Romans regarded Jupiter as the equivalent of the Greek Zeus. So this person is just Zeus, all right, the Roman version of Zeus, essentially. And we all know that they teach you about Zeus in school. All right, everybody has heard that name before, pretty much. Why is that? Because they want you to know the gods that they worship. Still today, this is not something that was just going on at the time of the Maccabees, the time of, in ancient Israel, in ancient Rome, so on and so forth. This is going on still today. Okay. Now, another term that we saw was Ganymede. All right. Remember, that was on the definition of a catamite. All right. Literally means Ganymede in Latin. There's a reason I'm pulling all this up, though. So Ganymede, it says in Greek mythology, Ganymede, a divine hero whose homeland was Troy. Ganymede was the most beautiful of mortals, and tell how he was abducted by the gods to serve as Zeus' cupbearer in Olympus. So essentially, okay, well, let's read it so I can actually. The myth was a model for the Greek social custom of pederastia. That was a Greek custom that our people will obviously get into as well. Because if you worship the god the quote unquote God Jupiter, you also support pederastic relationships as well. The romantic relationship between an adult male and an adolescent male. Now, normally a younger boy. Latin form of the name was Catamitus. Okay. But we scroll down here. If you see this boy with this eagle here, that eagle represents Zeus or Jupiter. Okay. And that's why I talked about, serving as Zeus's cupbearer, but it's going to show you here more blatant. It says Zeus kissing Ganymede right here. Sorry for the disturbing images, but we got to get the truth out here so we know what we're looking at. All right, so Zeus kissing Ganymede. So again, Jupiter is Zeus. So if you worship the quote unquote God Jupiter, you also are an advocate of pederasty. You understand? And this has always been a part of, what these people do, because isn't this just Rome 2.0? You think that they stopped worshiping these gods? So when you see these type of things happen on earth, it's not just because of, they want our kids to be sexualized, because that's a huge aspect of it. But it's also because of their pagan god worship. They're just literally putting their statutes and laws and pushing them on us. Matter of fact, let's skip to that right now. Let's get first Maccabees chapter 1, and then we can start at verse 11.
The book of First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
Keep going.
So this device pleased them well.
Keep going.
Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen.
So that's all of these are the ordinance of the heathen. All those aspects of fornication, those are the ordinance of the heathen. And this is just all happening back on earth again. They're trying to get the children of Israel to go after the ordinance of the heathen, which the prophet Jeremiah told us very clearly in Jeremiah chapter 10 to not partake in the customs of the heathen. But that's exactly what they're trying to get us to do. So it's not just about the physical aspect, this is buck broken and things like that. It's also on the spiritual side. They're trying to get us to worship their gods. Let's get verse 14.
Verse 14, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen.
Verse 15.
Verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief.
So some of them made themselves uncircumcised. That's how deep off they were into the customs of the heathen. They forsook the holy covenant. They forsook the Most High then, and joined themselves into the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. And the same thing is happening again. We have our women saying they're quote unquote pansexual and witches and things like that. That's them making a covenant with the heathen and forsaking the holy covenant. Now, of course, we know a lot of our people, we've never been exposed to the scriptures. We haven't been told that this is our book. Completely understand that, but you have to have at least a moral compass within you that says this can't be right. Right? I mean, it's kind of, that's kind of clear, but that's exactly what is happening on earth again. Okay. I wanted to pull 2 Maccabees chapter 4, so I thought I had that up. But that's the point, though, brothers. Like this is just happening all over again. It's really the worship of the pagan gods that they're trying to get us to embrace. I had a few things pulled up. I had this pulled up as well. Pedophilia in ancient Greece and Rome. While the practice of pedophilia today is morally wrong and an illegal act, Some of the ancient Greeks and Romans regarded as common practice and sometimes something to be celebrated. Not sometimes. Pedophilia was common in Greek and Roman mythology and daily life. You see that? This place is just Rome 2.0. So all they're doing is taking their customs that they have according to the pagan gods that they worship, and they're just making everybody do it all over again. Okay, that's what's really going on. Where is the verse that says, brothers, y'all know the verse I'm talking about? One should leave his laws and heathen and greed according to the command of the king. Where it says everybody kind of did the same thing. Let's go to something else real quick while I pull that. Another thing too, have y'all ever heard of this movie, Moonlight? This is something I didn't really know about at first, and it came out way back in 2016. I didn't remember hearing anything about it at that time. But this movie, Moonlight, in 2016, basically showed this young boy here being quote unquote homosexual at a very young age and going through and acting like his life was bad just because he was homosexual and people making fun of him and things like that. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Well, not talk about per se, but just one point quickly is, why do they act like, quote unquote homosexuals are made fun of and things like that more than, everybody else? Anybody that went to a public high school will know that either you gonna get picked on or you may have been the one picking on people, but it's going down. You got a big nose or long feet or somebody at you dang near on a daily basis, whether you quote unquote homosexual or not. So why they act like these people just treated way worse than anybody else? I got a chat to play the victims, can't mistreat the victim, brother. Exactly. Just so they can play the victim. But everybody go through the same thing. So, it's nonsense. That's why they're not to be taken serious, because they just create these narratives. And this is the verse I was looking for, verse 41. In First Maccabees, chapter 1.
Maccabees, chapter 1. Book of First Maccabees, chapter 1, and verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
All should be one people. That's what this is about. It's for everybody to be one people. Okay, it's way deeper than just quote unquote homosexuality. Anybody that know anything about the Kemet stuff, or the ancient Egypt stuff that a lot of our brothers are starting to embrace by greater numbers in these last days, we know that their main philosophy is as above, so below. What they don't realize, at least a lot of them don't realize, that as above, so below also refers to genders, okay, quote unquote genders. So male is female, female is male. God is Satan, Satan is God. That's what that really means. Up is down and down is up. Like brothers be telling you, as above, so below, brother. Okay. Speaking of them, let's look at this really quick. Now, we talked about on the second wilderness lesson, I believe, how the so-called white man, when I say that, I'm referring to the quote unquote elite. They got all of their gods from ancient Egypt, anyway. And look at one of these guys here named Happy, H-A-P-Y, I, H-A-P-I. Look at this entity here. You see this? It's an androgynous figure, has male and female parts. Why don't they ever talk about this person, the Kemet dudes? Because if you're going to embrace Kemet, then you got to embrace all these different guys. You can't act like you don't, bow the knee to this God too. Which we know they really just acting, because, God forbid something happened, they ain't gonna be calling on Osiris or nothing like that. You know, you get into some stuff, you get shot, you ain't gonna say, oh Cyrus, please help me. You're gonna say, oh my God, Lord, please help me. That's what you're gonna say. You're gonna call on the Most High, you're gonna call on Happy. But anyway, Happy is typically depicted as an androgynous figure with a prominent belly and large drooping breasts. So, you know, all of these same deities that they worship, all right, back in Egypt, back in Rome, it's just back here on earth right now, because today it's just Rome 2.0. That's it. Let's get Revelation chapter 13 and verse 12.
The book of Revelation, chapter 13 and verse 12. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wounds was healed.
Okay, when you go to Daniel, the 7th chapter, and you read about the four beasts, and also in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and also in the 8th chapter as well. But what I'm referencing here is the 7th chapter. You read about the fourth beast. All right, this is this fourth beast that was healed. All right, so the Roman Empire went out of power, then it came back. This is the reincarnation of the Roman Empire, quote unquote America, or Babylon the Great. Let's get verse 13.
Verse 13. And he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men.
So the nuclear missiles, all right, the so-called white man's militia makes great wonders, all right, for the other nations to admire, you know, the fornication and wickedness that they have. All right, let's get verse 14.
Verse 14. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live.
And did live. So Rome lives again. And what's the point of us going into that? Because we saw how Rome got down. We saw, you know, how pedophilia went down in ancient Rome and ancient Greece. All right. It's all the same thing over. If you down with pedophilia, then you down with everything else too. Nothing is out of bounds if you cool with that. Everything. So it's a fornication agenda. That's what they're trying to push on our people. You even got this, you know, I know brothers probably heard of this before, North American Man-Boy Love Association. This is a real thing, okay? The North American Man-Boy Love Association is a pedophilia and pederasty advocacy organization in the United States. It works to abolish age of consent laws, criminalizing adult sexual involvement with minors. You know, they've rebranded these people to what do they call them now? Minor attracted people. That's going to be added to the quote unquote LGBTQ, minor attracted people. Okay, that's what they calling it now. All Babylonian terms to get you to worship these different deities like quote unquote happy. All right, to get you to worship this deity. And again, you have to think about it like this. Like when you worship the Most High, what do? You keep the feast days, right? You keep the dietary law, you keep the moral law, you keep the laws, right? So when you worship Happy, you also keep his rights. If you worship Zeus, you keep his rights. So that's exactly what they do. Since they worship these left-hand side deities, they're trying to get everybody else to do the same thing, right? Like in Proverbs chapter 29 and 3, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Proverbs 29, 3. No, 29 and 2. Let's get Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2.
God is the book of Proverbs, chapter 29 and verse 2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn.
The people mourn, man, because you know, the wicked, man, they always gonna have us doing some stuff that's going off, man. All right. Another thing real quick, let's see where we at in time. Okay. So I remember watching this show called The Office. All right. And this character, which is an out homosexual on the show, I know brothers can't hear this, but he said, I am back as God of wine. That's what he said on the show. It's just out there. You know what I'm saying? Bacchus is who we read about in 2nd Maccabees chapter 6. Right? Let's get verse 7.
The book of 2nd Maccabees chapter 6 and verse 7. And in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go into procession to Bacchus carrying ivy.
So you were compelled to go on procession of the Bacchus carrying ivy. Hold on. Slaki, okay. Compelled to go on procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. So we were compelled to keep the rites of the Bacchus. All right, that's exactly why they call the degree that you get from college a baccalaureate degree. It comes from the quote unquote god Bacchus. Okay, a bachelor, it comes from the god Bacchus, which is known to be a god of revelry. So even common terms that you don't pay any attention to has pagan roots. And that's exactly why, because they want us to embrace these ideologies as much as possible. And why did I bring this up? Because they just slick tell you these things without you even realizing it. Okay, you think he bringing this up for no reason? No, him and the people on the show, the people behind the scenes, they actually do worship this quote unquote God. All right, and that's really what it is. All right, but let's end out with a few scriptures and wrap it up, man. Let's get Revelation chapter 18 and verse 2.
It's the book of Revelation chapter 18 and verse 2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird.
So Babylon is going to fall because of the worship of these deities. All right, this place is going to fall. Let's get verse 3.
Verse 3. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies.
So they trying to get all nations to drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The fornication is a real agenda. Meaning what? Adultery, idolatry of all manners of wickedness, homosexuality, pedophilia, quote unquote bisexuality, whatever. All of that stuff is what they want us into, all nations, but mainly us, because the children of Israel have the power of the Most High. So they're trying to take us out of power. They don't want us worshiping the Most High, because that means the end of Rome, the end of Babylon. They know that this prophecy is going to come fulfilled when the children of Israel have came back to the almighty power. You understand? That's why they put all these distractions in our face. That's all it is, man. Let's get Matthew chapter 24 and verse 12.
It's the book of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 12. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold.
Iniquity has abounded here on earth. Understand? Let's get Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12.
The book of Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time.
The so-called white man know he got but a short time to inhabit this earth. He know his rulership is ending. He know his people are dwindling away. All right. He know this is going down, man. He know the scriptures are going to come to pass. All right. So that's why he come with great wrath. That's why you see so much in a short amount of time. He know he got but a short time. So that's exactly what it is. That's why they push all this stuff on our people, man. trying to poison our youth, trying to poison us to embrace these quote unquote alternative lifestyles, even though they're not supported by the scriptures, not even their own quote unquote science. So yeah, just know that it's the spiritual wickedness in high places. And with that, I'm out. Shalom.